Imagine living in a country where you can leave your wallet on a cafe table, walk away, and almost certainly find it untouched when you return. A place where children walk to school alone, where neighbors borrow tools without contracts, and where politicians are expected to tell the truth, not as an exception, but as a rule. That place is Finland. The Finns are not only famous for their breathtaking lakes, their snowy winters, or their love of saunas. They are also famous for something far more rare in today's world: trust. According to global surveys, Finland consistently ranks at the very top when it comes to people trusting each other, trusting their government, and even trusting strangers. In fact, the world's most famous wallet test experiment, where researchers dropped wallets in different cities to see if they would be returned, showed Finnish honesty and trust on full display. Out of 12 wallets dropped in Helsinki, 11 were returned. 11. In many other countries, only 1 or 2 came back. But why? Why do Finns trust each other more than almost any nation on earth? Is it something in their history, their culture, their geography? Or is it simply a way of life passed down through generations? Today, we're going to take you on a journey through Finland's story of trust, how it was built, why it still survives, and what the rest of the world can learn from it. So, sit back, grab a cup of coffee, just like the Finns do, since they drink more coffee than any other people on the planet, and let's uncover the secret behind one of the world's most trustworthy nations. Chapter 1. Where do the deep roots of Finnish trust come from? Trust in Finland didn't appear overnight. It was carved slowly through history, shaped by struggle, survival, and shared responsibility. For centuries, Finland stood as a borderland between 2 giants, Sweden to the west and Russia to the east. Both powers ruled Finland at different times, often treating it as a battleground or buffer zone. Ordinary Finns, left at the mercy of empires, learned that they could not always rely on kings, governors, or armies. Instead, they had to rely on each other. Life in the Finnish countryside was unforgiving. The winters were long, dark, and brutally cold. Food shortages were common. If a neighbor's barn burned down, the entire village gathered to rebuild it. If one family ran out of grain during the hungry months, others shared what they had, knowing their turn for hardship could come next. Helping each other was not charity. It was survival. Unlike in many European countries where wealth was concentrated in noble families, Finnish society remained relatively equal. Most people were farmers, hunters, or fishermen. There were no sprawling estates where the elite lived far above the common people. This balance fostered a culture of cooperation rather than hierarchy. People saw neighbors not as rivals but as partners in enduring the hardships of nature. The 20th century tested Finland even more. Independence in 1917 brought hope, but also civil war, neighbors fighting neighbors, tearing the nation apart. Yet after the bloodshed, Finns realized unity was the only way forward. Soon after, Finland faced the Soviet Union in the Winter War of 1939 to 1940, one of the most uneven battles in modern history. Outnumbered and outgunned, Finnish soldiers survived by trusting each other absolutely. In the trenches, a man's life depended on the reliability of the soldier next to him. At home, women and children carried the burden of farms, families, and communities. Neighbors stepped in to watch over one another, because every absence, every fallen father, brother, or son left a gap only trust could fill. From these centuries of hardship grew sisu, a uniquely Finnish word describing courage, resilience, and determination in the face of impossible odds. But sisu is not only about inner strength. It also whispers a collective truth. Challenges are not faced alone, but together. That deep sense of solidarity became the soil in which trust took root, and it still shapes Finnish society today. Chapter 2. Equality and the Welfare State. Another key reason Finns trust each other lies in how their society is built on equality. Unlike countries where the gap between rich and poor widens year after year, Finland has worked for decades to keep society balanced. And this was not an accident. It was a deliberate choice made after hardship. When World War II ended, Finland was left devastated. Cities were damaged, industries destroyed, and the nation owed heavy war reparations to the Soviet Union. Instead of collapsing, Finland used the challenge as a turning point. The government and ordinary citizens decided the country could only survive if everyone shared both the burden and the benefits of recovery. Out of that came a strong welfare state. In Finland, education became free for all. Healthcare was made affordable and accessible. Social safety nets were introduced to ensure no one would fall too far behind. A child born in a small village in Lapland would have the same chance at success as a child in Helsinki. And this mattered deeply for trust. When people feel the system is fair, they are more willing to contribute, to follow rules, and to trust their neighbors to do the same. This equality also reduced corruption. In Finland, it is extremely rare for officials to accept bribes. Transparency International consistently ranks Finland among the least corrupt countries on earth. Why? Because when wealth is shared more fairly and systems are transparent, there are fewer chances for dishonesty to creep in. Even taxes, something people complain about in most countries, are viewed differently in Finland. High taxes exist, yes, but they are trusted. People believe the money goes back into schools, hospitals, roads, and support for the elderly. Instead of seeing taxes as theft, most Finns see them as an investment in the common good. This is why surveys show Finns having unusually high trust in government, police, and public institutions. When the system works for all, citizens believe they are treated equally, whether rich or poor, powerful or ordinary. That belief spills into daily life, into how people treat coworkers, neighbors, and strangers. In short, Finland built trust by building fairness. And once fairness became part of everyday life, trust grew naturally. Chapter 3: The Education of Trust. If you want to understand why Finns trust each other, you must look at their schools. Finland's education system is not just famous for academic results. It is famous for how it teaches fairness, responsibility, and respect. In most countries, schools are divided. Wealthier families send children to elite private schools, while poorer families settle for underfunded public ones. This creates gaps in opportunity and trust. Finland chose a different path. After reforms in the 1970s, the government built a system where all children, no matter their background, study together in high-quality public schools. Private schools exist, but they are rare. The result? Children grow up seeing themselves as equals, not divided by class or wealth. Teachers in Finland are also different. Becoming one is as competitive as becoming a doctor or lawyer. Every teacher must hold a master's degree. But once they qualify, the system does something unusual. It trusts them. Unlike in many nations where teachers are buried under standardized tests, inspections, and political interference, Finnish teachers are given freedom. They design lessons to fit their students. They are trusted to do their job well, and in return, they raise students who value honesty, independence, and cooperation. The culture of trust also shows in how students are treated. Homework is lighter, tests are fewer, and the pressure to compete is lower. Instead of ranking children against each other, the focus is on learning together. When a student struggles, classmates often help rather than compete. Cooperation becomes normal. This approach produces more than just smart graduates. It produces citizens who trust others. A future doctor, factory worker, and bus driver may have sat side by side in the same classroom. They shared meals, projects, and sports without divisions. Later in life, when they meet again in society, those childhood bonds make trust natural. Finnish schools also encourage responsibility. From an early age, children are taught independence, walking to school alone, organizing group projects, and solving problems together. These experiences build confidence in themselves and faith in others. In Finland, education is not just about reading and math. It is about raising citizens who believe society is fair and who carry that trust into adulthood. Chapter 4: Everyday Life in a High-Trust Society. What does trust look like when it becomes part of everyday life? In Finland, you don't have to search hard, you see it everywhere. Walk through a Finnish town in summer, and you might notice a wooden table by the roadside, piled with strawberries, potatoes, or wild blueberries. Next to it is a simple cash box, or even just a sign with a price. No cameras, no shopkeeper. People take what they want, leave money, and walk away. The honor system works because most Finns wouldn't dream of cheating it. Another everyday example is children. In many countries, parents are afraid to let their kids out of sight. In Finland, 7-year-olds walk to school alone. Parents leave baby strollers outside cafes while they sit inside drinking coffee. The babies nap peacefully outdoors, and no one worries about kidnapping. For foreigners, this seems unbelievable. For Finns, it is simply normal life in a society where people trust one another. Even politics looks different in a high-trust country. Finnish politicians don't hide behind walls of privilege. Many take public transport, shop at the same stores, and stand in line at the same hospitals as everyone else. Corruption scandals are rare. And when they do happen, the public reacts strongly. Trust is expected, not requested. Workplaces also reflect this culture. Contracts are often short and straightforward because both sides assume agreements will be honored. Employers trust employees to manage their own time. Remote work arrangements and flexible schedules are common because managers believe workers will still get the job done. And then there's the sauna, Finland's most famous social space. In the sauna, titles and ranks melt away with the steam. Politicians, business leaders, and everyday citizens can sit side by side. Saunas are seen as places of honesty, where problems are discussed openly and respect is shown equally. Even crime tells a story about trust. Finland has one of the lowest crime rates in Europe. Police officers are trusted so deeply that surveys often rank the Finnish police as among the most respected institutions in the country. When citizens believe the police are fair, they cooperate rather than fear them. From roadside markets to government halls, trust is not just a value in Finland, it is the glue holding everyday life together. Chapter 5. The Dark Side, When Trust is Tested. High trust does not mean Finland is perfect. In fact, the very strength of trust makes it more painful when it is broken. And Finland, like every society, has faced moments where that trust was stretched to its limits. One of the earliest tests came after independence in 1917. The Finnish Civil War split the country into two camps, Reds and Whites. Neighbors turned against neighbors. Families were divided. Trust collapsed. For years afterward, bitterness lingered. But over time, Finns deliberately rebuilt unity, teaching the next generations that survival depended not on division, but on cooperation. That painful memory still reminds Finns how fragile trust can be if society turns on itself. In more recent decades, politics has offered tests. While Finland has low corruption by global standards, small scandals occasionally erupt. For example, in the 2000s, several politicians were accused of failing to disclose campaign donations properly. Compared to countries with large-scale corruption, these incidents may seem minor, but in Finland, even small cracks matter. Public outrage is strong because citizens expect transparency. When leaders betray that expectation, they risk losing their careers permanently. Trust is never taken lightly. Immigration has also tested Finland's social fabric. Traditionally, a very homogeneous society, Finland in recent decades has welcomed newcomers from Somalia, Iraq, Russia, and other countries. This has created debates about whether the same high-trust culture can extend to people with different traditions. Some Finns worry that dishonesty or crime might increase. Others argue that trust must be shared, not limited by ethnicity or background. The conversation is ongoing, but it shows how trust must adapt to a changing society. Economic crises have posed another challenge. In the 1990s, Finland experienced a severe depression, with unemployment reaching nearly 20%. For some, trust in the system wavered. But again, recovery was built not on suspicion, but on collective effort. The government introduced reforms, citizens endured sacrifices, and society slowly rebuilt itself. These examples reveal an important truth. Finnish trust is not blind. It is not naive. It is strong precisely because it has been tested. When trust is broken, Finns react quickly and demand accountability. They do not shrug and say, "That's just how things work." In Finland, trust survives not because it is never challenged, but because the people refuse to let dishonesty become normal. Chapter 6. Why the World Notices. In a world where suspicion often feels like the default, Finland's culture of trust shines like an exception. International surveys regularly highlight this difference. Year after year, Finland tops the World Happiness Report, and one of the strongest reasons is trust. Trust in neighbors, trust in institutions, and even trust in strangers. Consider the famous wallet test conducted by Reader's Digest. Researchers dropped wallets in cities around the globe to see how many would be returned. In Helsinki, 11 out of 12 wallets came back. Compare that to Lisbon, where only 1 wallet was returned, or New York, where just 4 made their way back to the owner. For Finland, Honesty wasn't the surprise, it was the expectation. The world also notices Finland's exceptionally low corruption levels. Transparency International ranks Finland consistently among the top 3 least corrupt nations. This sets it apart not only from developing countries, but also from wealthy Western nations where lobbying, hidden donations, and political scandals are common. In Finland, a politician caught lying or abusing power rarely survives in office. That accountability makes headlines abroad because it feels unusual in an era where distrust in politics dominates news cycles. Finland's low crime rates also catch the world's attention. Police are trusted so much that citizens frequently describe them as approachable partners rather than feared authorities. This contrasts with countries where police forces are seen as corrupt, violent, or biased. International observers point out that this trust in law enforcement directly reduces crime, citizens cooperate, report wrongdoing, and believe justice will be fair. Even business experts notice Finland. International companies often comment on the straightforwardness of Finnish deals. Contracts are short because both sides assume agreements will be respected. Foreign investors are often surprised by how little energy is wasted on guarding against fraud. In a world increasingly divided by misinformation and political distrust, Finland stands out as proof that high-trust societies can exist in modern times. And this is why the world watches with fascination. Finland challenges the idea that suspicion is inevitable. For outsiders, Finland raises an uncomfortable question. If trust works so well there, why can't it work in their own countries? Chapter 7. Lessons for the rest of us. So what can other countries learn from Finland's culture of trust? At first glance, it might seem impossible to copy. After all, Finland is small, with just over 5.5 million people. It is wealthy, peaceful, and far from the world's conflict zones. But if we look closer, the Finnish model offers lessons that any society, big or small, can put into practice. The first lesson is that trust begins early. In Finland, children are raised to be independent and responsible. They walk to school alone, organize group projects, and are taught honesty in daily life. Schools don't pit students against each other in cutthroat competition. Instead, they focus on cooperation and fairness. When children grow up with these values, they carry them into adulthood. Other countries can learn that teaching integrity in schools is just as important as teaching math or science. The second lesson is fairness creates trust. When people believe that laws apply equally and that taxes are used wisely, they are more likely to play by the rules. In Finland, citizens may grumble about high taxes, but they rarely see them as theft. They see them as contributions to a system that works. For countries struggling with corruption, investing in transparency and accountability could slowly rebuild public trust. The third lesson is that trust needs protection. Finland doesn't allow dishonesty to become normal. Politicians caught lying face real consequences. Businesses that cheat lose credibility. Citizens demand accountability. In other words, trust survives because it is defended. Other nations can take note. Corruption may never be fully eliminated, but if it is punished consistently, people will believe honesty still matters. The fourth lesson is that trust grows in communities, not just governments. The roadside berry stands, the returned wallets, the saunas where leaders and citizens sit as equals. These are not government programs. They are cultural habits. They show that ordinary people play as big a role in building trust as politicians do. And finally, Finland teaches us that trust takes time. It is built slowly through generations of fairness, equality, and cooperation. Other nations can't copy Finland overnight, but they can start by making small changes: fairer schools, cleaner politics, more open communities. Step by step, trust can grow. Conclusion: the power of trust. So why do Finns trust each other more than almost any nation on earth? Because their history taught them to survive together. Because their society is built on equality and fairness. Because their schools raise children to value honesty and respect. Because their daily life reinforces the habit of trust. And because they defend trust whenever it is tested. The result is a nation where strangers return wallets, neighbors borrow tools without fear, and politicians are expected to tell the truth. It is a nation where happiness and trust walk hand in hand. Now the question is, what about us? What about our countries, our communities, our families? Would you trust your neighbor with your wallet? Would you leave your child outside a cafe and feel safe? Would you believe a politician without doubting every word? For many of us, the answer is no. But Finland shows that it doesn't have to be that way. Trust is not just a dream, it is real, and it can be built. Maybe the world doesn't need more wealth or weapons to solve its problems. Maybe it needs something much simpler, the courage to trust. And perhaps that is Finland's greatest gift to the world, a reminder that honesty, fairness, and trust are not weaknesses but strengths, strengths that can hold a nation together even through the darkest winters.